Rightio. Today is going to be an interesting day. It's technically an evening when my fluoros turn on. It's going to be interesting. Let's go now. Let's turn on the rest of the workshop here. Today I'm going to cast some white metal, also known as Babbitt metal, or in this case this is scrap metal. It comes in various formulations. This one was DSL. This stuff I think is leftover Microid X. It's mostly tin. You can hear how heavy the stuff is. And it makes quite an impact when it drops in the scrap box as well. So, what am I going to do with this stuff? Well, this is a reject. I made a plaque for my late brother quite some time ago. And this one I never actually finished. It bulged out in the middle of the mould. The final finished version of this is very nice and shiny. It has some very good properties when we run it over a rag wheel. So today I've got a rather basic setup at the moment until I get a proper crucible, but this is a little steel tin. I'll be melting a small quantity. The next thing I'll be doing is laser cutting some MDF, something along this lines. And this is a mould I've made previously as a commission job for somebody. They designed their design and I turned it into a mould. The way I'll be laser cutting them is on this laser cutter. The reason I'm explaining most of this ahead of time is this is a very noisy process. The laser cutter makes a moderate amount of noise, the extraction system makes even more, and then hiding over behind all of this there's an air compressor for the air assist, is the noisiest part of all. But I'm going to have to go to my laser cutting machine here. Now I've already pre-done all the CAD designs for this on my workhorse inside. This machine is courtesy of a local aeronautical design company that refurbished their computers a while ago. Not really the greatest for doing AutoCAD, but it does well enough to load the files into the laser cutter. It would appear that I'm yet to turn my monitor on. There we go. So you can probably see my shed is really lacking in lots of things, to be honest, but it works for the moment until I can do something better. You can probably hear in the background it's currently raining. There's a big storm front coming through and the tin up in here leaks, so I have a drip bucket in there for now. I have fresh tin arranged by the landlord, but we'll be doing something about that later. And before you ask, there's nothing in that. That gun safe's empty at the moment. Rightio. My password is asterisk, 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 as you might guess. So, onwards to the design. I'll resume this video once I've got everything loaded and ready to go. Well, we have our design loaded up, and I'm sorry if this is a little bit loud, but I've got some hearing protection on. So what we have here, this is a 3-piece mould. And I have messages coming in. Any case, this is the central piece. This will be 3mm thick, and this will create the spacing. It will create the body of the keychain. This keychain's for a family member of mine for Christmas. I'm not sure what they're doing, but we'll find out, I guess. This piece here is the relief for the top half, and this is the back half. This is the relief as well. Where there's hatching here in white, this will be engraved in raster mode, and everything where there is a line, this will be cut in vector mode. We'll see the laser here is currently running. I'm trying something new. I'm using some painter's tape here to hold my piece in. Normally I'll use these little Robertson self-tapping screws to hold the material into the bed if it's flexing very badly, or if it's nice and straight, I'll use a blob of blue tack to hold it in. This sheet, luckily it's an offcut sheet and it's been stacked fairly well for a while, and I've had some warm days. It's straightened out nicely, so see how we go. I'll transfer the file across shortly, and the compressor is up to speed, so we are going to go, and we've got to do a couple of things here. We are going to plot directed to our laser cutter which gives us our bed size here. And we're going to bring it in 10mm from the corners. I think because of the painter's tape, I'm going to bring it in 15mm from the corners rather than center it, and that gives us a nice position there. I'm going to apply that and save it, and that should send it over to the laser cutter. If I've done that right, we have our laser cutter here. Now I'm going to go and change a couple of things. File management here, that one, edit. Now the vector settings are fairly crucial. If I do it at 0.8 speed, it's going to take me all day. So we really want between about 38 and 40%, I find yields a fairly nice result. Let me go back here. I pushed the wrong button because I'm looking at it through a screen. So let's go raster setting. I was changing the wrong setting here. So we need to come up to about 38%. If I do this too deeply, then the relief won't come out of the mold. And if I do it too shallow, then it won't be visible. So let's come back here, almost there. %. We want that so it optimizes the cutting. We want to go back, we want to check our vector mode. Yes, I'd edited the wrong one. Vector mode needs to be quite slow, about 0.8%, which is still quite quick. Oh, what have we got? 0. Coincidentally, 0 still moves. Alright, we're good there. Go back, back and back. Okay, the next thing we need to do here, we need to get ourselves set up with an autofocus. So we are going to go autofocus, and I'll see it'll come up here till it hits the autofocus pin. There we go, we're focused. Now we'll shut the lid. Now we need some air through it. So we're going to give it a little bit of air off the regulator here. Alright. And now, moment of truth. We go start. Now see here, it's starting to cut the raster mode sections. So I'll flash back when it actually starts cutting it and we'll see what the rest of it's doing. So the next step of this process is of course heating up metal. There we go. We have some of this. And safety first, we need some gloves. I have a scraper here which I will be using when it's hot to scrape off the slag. And somewhere here I have a little mixing tool. This is my little mixing tool, just a piece of coat hanger wire. Simple but very effective. That will melt, and by about the time our mold's finished, that should be quite liquid and ready to go. So we're now part way through the cutting, and I've noticed a problem. The laser cutter is not resolving some of the graphics. So that's going to be interesting. It is about to start to switch to cutting mode, but I'm missing my Santa on the rear relief. That's going to be a problem. So back to AutoCAD it is. So now that our metal's up to temperature, I'm going to scrape off a little bit of slag off the top. I have a receptacle for that over here. I'm going to scrape a little bit more off up here. Now if we bring our light over here, you can see it's quite nice and shiny. However, due to a slight laser cutting hitch, I'm going to let this cool down while I go and fix my cutting. Didn't quite go to plan. Righto, so second time round I've corrected the graphics, and I went for a slightly more simple design, if we can see it here. And it's very noisy in here, I know. We'll be back when we're finished. Alright, so she's a little more quiet in the workshop now, and it's time to remove these parts from the mould. Or rather, remove the mould parts from the laser cutter. I had to go with a slightly more simple design just simply because I didn't have time to hatch the design that I wanted, but it's really superfluous for the rear. Now, you might notice that's mirrored. That's intentional, and I'll show you why in a moment. But let's go assemble this mould. Right, so I'm over on the mould prep table here, and because we're pouring metal in, we need a bit of a mould release. So I use graphite powder, which I get from my local hardware store. I give this a good work in with my fingers for best results. It does tend to make my fingers a little black, but you know, that happens. The other little thing I need to, even though there's a bit of ash in here which adds to a bit of mold release in itself, it doesn't hurt to get a little bit of graphite in here as well, and sometimes just on the pouring sprue as well. Give them all a little bit of a tap as well, and then I need to pop out all the alignment holes. And I'll do all this. I'll move to the next bench where I assemble. Right, so the next part of this process involves some square drive screws. And it's actually, as you might expect, it's a relatively simple process here. Once we've popped all the parts of the mould out, and they all layer together. Right, just making a little bit of care to make sure that the text is also clear as well. Too much graphite in the text actually reduces the quality of the end product. Now the plan here is basically to put some self-tappers through, and I'll line all these up properly. Looks like the magnet is missing out of this driver, but that's not the end of the world. Got two of these in here. Now, the crucial part, some of you more observant people might have noticed that there's a hole that would, in theory, let the white metal out. Well, here's the trick. Once we've got everything aligned, I put a screw through that hole, and that will become a hole for the keyring. And it seems to be the night that nobody wants to stop messaging me. And I'm trying hard to ignore them because I'm busy here. And I also need to be at a bit of a rush here because I can hear my gas bottle is now running out on my white metal. So I'm going to get stuck into this and we'll skip through to that bit. Alright, so the next step of this plan, stick our mould in the vise. Do it up reasonably firm. Now, a process or a step in the process that I had forgot to film is that I actually took a knife blade and made a couple of little scratches in the gaps between the mould. And that purely just lets a little bit of air out so they don't end up with little pockets in the mould. And fun fact, this isn't actually proper high temperature clay or anything like that. This is plain out blue tack. Because the particular metal I'm using melts at around about 600 degrees, blue tack actually quite happily stands up to the temperature. I need a bit of a top on here to create some hydraulic pressure. And the step after that will be a hammer. So we are very much nearing the point of no return here. And we pour the white metal. Just got to get my gloves on. Now I need to take one last little spot, scrape some of the crap off the top, some of the slag. Nice clean metal, makes for a better finish. Now this is all going to happen quite quickly here. Got to do this two-handed. Right, so that's poured. I hammer slightly in order to get a little bit of mould, get the metal rattling down into the mould and bring some of the air bubbles to the surface. It looks like I'm out of little mini ingots. I know I still have some extra stuff left over. While we're waiting for that to cool, I'm going to remelt some of my previous casts to keep that up to speed. I have a big chunk here to melt at some point in the near future. We can hear some of that sizzling. Let's check to see here. We're still a bit soft, we're still in pudding phase. That'll solidify shortly, and then I'll slice down the side here, cut that out. In fact, I can almost get away with it now. Because the idea is while it's soft, I want to be able to slice the top of that open. Use the cooling effect of the vise to cool this stuff down. But this is a little hotter than I would normally do it, which means there's a little bit of skill involved in getting this off. I might just have to wait, and I'll restart this in a moment. So I've managed to get the blue tack off. Things have cooled a little bit. Now we're just going to slice out a little bit off the top here. While it's still soft. And that just fell down on top of an Amiga 2000. Probably not good. I need to find a better spot for that. And to pick up my slack off the ground. One bit. And there's the other bit, which we do not want to touch with bare hands. Just like the rest of this. So I'll move to the next bench and we'll let that cool off. So we've actually managed to do two casts. Had a bit of a cock up when I used the wrong text setting. It actually started to try and laser cut around the engraved text. So I cast this one as a test run. Fortunately, it's also a little cooler than the first one at the moment. I need a new magnet in that thing. Let's see how we go here. One of the reasons I like these square drive screws is that they're nice and reversible and reusable. You can probably hear from that ding in the background that despite the fact that it's 11 o'clock at night, people are still harassing me to do stuff for them. So I won't undo all four of these screws yet. They are quite hot still. I need to be very careful with my middle finger up the top there. It's touching part of it. You know what? If YouTube actually does make this miracle of actually making a few bucks, I might go and buy a new set of screwdrivers. Might even be able to find a specialty screwdriver. This guy was almost coming out here. This is actually white right through the metal itself, and this will form the keychain hole. This is a 3mm fine thread screw, whereas the square drive screws are about 4mm, and that screw is quite hot but just bearable. Switch back here and we might be able to see the moment of truth when we open these molds up. Okay, we'll adjust our camera here slightly. Okay then, we have a hot one and a cold one. Let's try a cold one here. That's come away very nicely. That looks good. That will take a little bit of cleaning up, and looks like our text, that laser cut part of the text, is going to mean that that is a reject because it didn't come out very well. But it's come out nicely anyway. This one looks much more promising. This is still a little warm. It's come out quite well. We can peel that section of our mould off. Some of our sprue here. It's dropped away very nicely. I'm much happier with that. We'll give this a bit of a clean up and a run on the buffing wheel, and we'll be right. So now I've given them a little bit of a trim. In fact, I've just decided to do the good one, not bother with the other. It's there's a hole right through it. In fact, we can grab it and see. You might be able to see, I can't tell from this angle, but there is actually an inclusion all the way through it. So the one I thought was a reject is definitely a reject. So now I need to give these a quick sand. I am going for a slightly rustic look, so I'm not worrying too much about the overall finish here. I'm just giving it a quick little clean up just to clean the edges, and the buffing wheel should probably do the rest. I'll grab a sheet of slightly finer paper. This is about a 1500 grit, and this should give it a little bit more of a shine on the top. You don't really need much. This metal is so soft. Really, that's probably all we need. As a wise person on another YouTube channel, of which I forget, said about casting or polishing resin and sanding it down, you only need to remove the scratches from the previous grade of paper. And that's about it. I have some 2000 grit, but we just want to get some scratches off the side here. I have a fairly aggressive cutting compound on the rag wheel, and that should probably do the rest for this. Because of the design, it's a little difficult to get into here, and as I'm a little pressed for time, probably not going to worry too much about that. I just want to get most of the sharp edges cleaned up. That should help some of the shine. So the next step is the rag wheel. So we're over at the rag wheel here. I have some Josco brand, what is this? Iron oxide buffing compound. It's a moderate grade. We'll get our rag wheel running. And apply a little bit of buffing compound on there. Probably note there is a foam pad behind this in case this gets loose. You can't see on camera. As we start to shine it up, it'll come up really good. I'm just going to shine up this edge a little bit and give you a quick look at how quickly this results in a nice reflective surface. Look at that. Comes up beautifully quickly. Probably helps that I've also just recently straightened up this and balanced this rag wheel. A little bit more compound. And I'll run this in here. It does take a bit of practice on a rag wheel to get the pressure just right. When you do, you get some stunning results. Now we start on the good bit. This really lifts everything out. Also gets to the compound fairly quick. So I'm starting on the relief on the back, just because it's a little sacrificial. just something decorative I've added to fill the dead space. And it's not strictly necessary if it looks good or if it even works. Looks like I have a little bit of an inclusion in this, but with luck, it won't cause me too much grief. Yep. I'm getting there with a shine. So this is the bit that takes some time. So let's just have a quick wipe on wipe some of the wax off here. Start to see it's starting to lift out with a bit of shine. Let's get some more light on the subject here. You can probably see it's starting to reflect nicely. Anyway, I'll jump through to the finished product. There you have it. Here's our finished product. He's kind of shiny. Let me see our thing on there. You see the slight inclusion. I was kind of hoping that didn't happen, and it probably means my metal was a little bit cool when I poured it. So some of the divoting on the surface here is also a direct result of that, but I think in this case I'm not getting paid for this, so I think this is probably quite suitably acceptable. So I think I'm going to be happy with that. I've almost got a mirror finish on the edges. I'll find a key ring for that at some point later, but I think that'll be good.